So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and today's shir number 2 in Likutei Maharan. It's really wonderful to get over to the Likutei Maharan and just talking about what the Rebbe is saying, the way that I understand it. Yesterday I had a really nice shir, and it was going about 9 minutes or something like that, and I looked down and I saw that it stopped at about the 5-minute mark. And I didn't know why, and it just was very disappointing because I really felt tremendous connection going on there. So what could I do? I erased it and figured out what was wrong, and then had to do the shir again. But I wasn't at the same place anymore because time moves on. So we're going to come back over here. Remember that I told you a little story that this is a book from many moons ago. It was given to me by Rabbi Chaim Kramer. He sent it to me. And this is the way that the book originally appeared. Now, since then, there's probably lots and lots, but this is something that just tremendously sweet ideas. This is a Rebbe who really wants to teach us how to become tzaddikim ourselves, which means we gain the favor of Hashem Yisbarach, and how it is that we can find a way to have our prayers and our needs answered. Anybody that knows me knows basically this is what I'm doing all the time. So, or trying to anyway. So yesterday we got to the concept where we were in the first Likutei Maharan, and it starts with Ashrei Samimi Derech HaHolchem B'Taras Hashem. So those who have an innocent path in the world. And he goes on in other places to say that this really refers to us when we realize that Hashem Yisbarach is the one, as it is to say, that can answer our prayers, and we need to see how it is that he's manifest in the world to be able to find him, because he's here all the time. He said, look, let's start right here. He says, Ki Isha Yisraeli, it's a Jew, Tzarek Tomed Sheyistakol B'Chasech Shekesh B'Chol Dover. He has to constantly be looking for the godliness that is in every happenstance. I just mentioned just a simple frustration that I had yesterday. So you have to look at it and you realize that the place that I was at, we're going to have to start over again. And that's what the situation is. That's what Hashem gave me. So he said, let me go over here and keep going. So he says, you have to be able to look at the seichel, which means the chokhmah shall call davar. The kasher atzmo al ha-chokhmah, and to tie yourself to that. This is the concept of tevekus. Rabbi Memran is talking about this. All the Mekubalim are talking about this is what we want. The chokhmah and the seichel is the same in the intelligence. In other words, there is a supreme mastering going on, a supreme master. I can't even say there's a supreme master because that implies that I have some knowledge of that, which I don't, but there is an intelligence here that the Rebbe is telling us. This intelligence, sheyesh b'chol davar, is in everything, not just physical things, which is very true, but also relationship things, and also things that have to do with our life status. Shem Yisbarach, and that seichel is in all of this. So let's go on. So it's possible that in the midst of the Arafel, in the midst of the darkness, you can find this. The Hiskar L'Shem Yisbarach, that you can actually use the problems. This is what he wants to say. To use it to find the seichel that is in it. Or godol, because the sefer said the seichel is a tremendous light, the light of mind. Umeir lo b'kol derochov, and it can shine into that person in everything, in every place that he travels. Because we have this phrase here that the chokhmah of a person lights up his face because it's benimi to the person. You have to find it. This is the concept of Yaakov. Because it says like what? Yaakov, we understand, is the concept of Tiferes. Yaakov is the middle line. Yaakov is the balance. He says, Yaakov zocha lebechora. So this is the concept of Yaakov. Yaakov is what? Yaakov is first. Seichel, his intelligence, is the concept of Chokhmah, also known as Abba. So it's also this tremendously high light that is the beginning of our ability, as if it's possible to say, to understand or to reach towards the infinity. Shehi bechinas chochma, it's chochma, rashis, the bechor, the concept of the firstborn. So why, therefore, he was zocha lebechor, he earned, he was meritorious towards this. What does it mean to be able to see the ultimate intelligence that is behind the happenstance of our life? So he says, Kamasha Kosovit, he brings a little, this little pasuk in Tehillim, it says, Reish is Chochma, the beginning is Chochma. So this is a concept that the Rav uses all the time, Rebbe Shimon uses all the time. He said, V'zecha b'bechinas v'yagveni zeh pa'amayim. You Yaakov me twice. So the Targum says, V'zeh unklas atzav v'chachmeni, you used Chochma against me, because Esav has no interest in Chochma. He only has interest in what's in front of his face that he wants. So this is the concept of you use the sun. Because the seichel, if you can attach yourself to be dovik to them, it will shine for you everywhere, just like the sun. And he keeps using the word rochov, and you notice up above, he talked about Tamimi Darach, right? The same word again. I interpret it to mean it's the path of our lives. When I wake up in the morning and the mitzvahs that I do there, when I go to get into my car and I go to the synagogue and I interact with people and all of these different things that are going, those are my paths in life. The comic strip of this little kid where the cartoonist shows you his steps and all the different places he goes. Well, this is like us too. The truth is that we're walking around in God's world. So let's go on. This is what the Rebbe is saying. So it shines everywhere you go. Wherever you go, it's always with you. So the light, the tzaddikim, that is that when you are attached, you become a tzaddik. Is like or noga cholech v'or that continues and to shine ad nachom hayom until it reaches its highest point. So he says this is the beginning of the Rebbe's Torah here. It says that this is the beginning of the letter Ches. So Lashon, he says, he writes, we have this little addition in here, it's Lashon Chiyus, Lashon life force. That Ches refers here to life, the force of life, the energy of life. Because Chachma, as we see, if we continue to learn the Atzvos Chaim, we're going to see a little bit more about Chochma. But Chochma is the creative power. It's the energy to bring ultimate consciousness. Ki HaChochma v'HaSeichel, He HaChiyus Shekol Dover is that life force in everything. Because there's another pasuk, it says that Chochma brings its life. The Chaya brings life, the energy of life. But the thing is like this. The light of this intelligence is tremendously powerful. It is a light of nothingness because our physicality ties us down to small-mindedness. We have to be worried about what's going on with the lead inside of the pencil that I'm using right now. There's so much detail to all of this to be able to function here. The light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is nothing like this. And so therefore we couldn't exist in its presence. So he says, so therefore it's not possible to reach the level of the seichel unless you have another aspect, which is the concept of the nun, which he says is what? Malchus, which is Malchus. If Chochmah is the beginning, then Malchus is the end. And if you can't have a beginning without an end. An end implies a beginning. And so therefore we look to see, well, where does this flow come from? So it comes from Chochmah, Reishis Chochmah, Kamasha Kosav of Lifnei Shemesh Yinun Shemo, because we said in the presence of the sun, which is a shining stream, you have to bring in the nun to become a receptacle for that light. Upirish Rashi Lashon Malchus. So Rashi explains this means Malchus. It's also the aspect of the moon. Levona ein law or ma'atzma, because the levona, which is the concept of Malchus, is empty. This is basic read that the Rab is telling us in a nice, sweet package. He says that it has no light of its own. It's dark, really empty. But only what it receives from the sun. So therefore the moon glows when its sun shines on it. So this is the concept of what we see in the Zohar and the Rab in so many places called Zohar V'Nuk, male and female. Without the female, the male is non-existent. But the female makes it possible for that tachlis, his ultimate purpose, to come about, because he has to have some place to give. So this is what it says, and if you understand these points, and this is really behind all of my learning for many, many years, is to try to find how these things go together and make them work as best as possible. This is the concept of Malchus, the Les Lama Grama Klom, which has nothing of her own. She has nothing. The female aspect is empty. This is what we need to understand, and for those of you who study psychology or are interested in relationships between men and women, that you understand that this is a fundamental principle. And so therefore, if you apply it, then you understand, well, what's this Garden of Peace that I read it really helped revolutionize a lot of my relationship with my significant other. So he says, because it tells you what the basic nature of these opposites are. He says the basic nature of the male is that he has something that he needs to give. And the basic nature of the female is that she needs to receive those two things, the Ratzon, the Kabel, to make everything work. But if you don't have the two of them, then you have nothing. So basically, the idea is that the two are so different that it's difficult to be able to put the two together, and this is the struggle of Kedusha. Try to put together the Zohar V'Nuk. Let's go on. So therefore the Nun has only what it gets for the Ches, which is Chochmah. Shehi b'bechinas Chochmah. Bechinas Shemesh, concept of shining, pouring out goodness. And when that happens, then the two become one. That's the concept of the Yichud that we listen to in the Zohar all the time. So we're constantly talking about putting them together. But a person who doesn't tie himself to the seichel and realize that in everything that's going on, God is in it. That seichel is within it. It preceded you. It preceded the event. It preceded the feeling. It preceded everything. So he says, Atzmo, because the one that doesn't look, the one that doesn't want to know, that's our brother. So you see that everywhere you go, there are opposites, all different kinds. Some good, some bad. Let's go on a little bit more. So he says, what can we tell you about Esav? Shabiza es habchara. He despised, he made fun of, he considered it to be below his feet, the concept of a firstborn, which we're talking about once again. Rashis, the firstborn is Chochmah. Kamasha Kasa v'yavach of Esav as habchara, v'yaves, that this was disgusted by the concept of the firstborn. The Heinrich Seichel, that is, he didn't want interested in Seichel. And it's also this lo yachbel chesil, a fool. So that's what he's saying. He's saying a very strong thing. The Goyim not interested in Yud Kei Vav Kei. They're not interested in Seichel. They're interested in fulfilling their needs in this world, because this is their world, that's it. And so he says, "Lo yachbos kasil b'tavuna," that a fool doesn't want to understand. His galus libo only with the expression of his heart. So this is the concept of the kingdom of the evil one. It's the concept of the Levana of the Sitra Achra. Because on the other side it said that they covered over the moon. They don't want it to receive, they like darkness. They don't want it to receive this light. This light they don't want. So now the Rav says that this is the concept of the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. Because the Yetzer Tov is called one who is poor, empty, but wise, filled with the wisdom of Chochmah. Bechinas Malchus, this is also the concept Malchus, once again, empty. Shehiba Bechinas Iniya, which is a poor woman, Dala, low, the Liz Lacha Magroma Klum, that she has nothing of her own, just like the Rebbe said. Then we were talking about the moon. She has only what ultimately flows through the spheros to her from Chochmah. V'yetzer hara, what's that? Nikra melech zaken v'ksil, so that the Yetzer hara is called the king who is old. In other words, he can't change. I can't change. Uksil, and a fool. But you can change. This is one of the basic Rebbe's lessons of the Rebbe. You have potential. So he says Malchus the star. This is the Malchus of the other side. Doesn't really want Chochmah and Seichel. What's going to do with it? That's the concept that the fool doesn't want to understand, doesn't want to know. So therefore everybody has to put his energy into the concept of the Malchus, the Kedusha, to be able to take the Malchus of Kedusha and overcome the Malchus of the other side. Now don't say, understand, he means to say to Lihizgaver, it doesn't mean to destroy it, because the struggle there is very important to creation. It's something that we have to learn about. The rabbi say in the Gemara in Brachos, La'olam Yargiz Adam Yetzer Tov Yetzer Hara. It means, Yargiz means to become passionately involved in the energy that is required to subjugate the Yetzer Tov with through the Yetzer Hara with the Yetzer Tov. So that's the question. This is his question. What is the tool that you need to use to be able to innervate that energy within yourself that can subjugate your Yetzer Hara? It's the Torah. That when you put your effort, you work on it with effort, that you really try. And remember that when he originally started talking, he started talking about this. If you are a person who believes that God could answer your questions or your prayers or your needs and alter your life into a life of much more harmony with Him, and that was what helped you in attaining all the things that you need, that you ultimately want out of your life. If you're a person that thinks about that, the Rebbe is telling us a formula, the basic formula. And he'll explain it later. He says, L'malchus the Kedusha, so he says, V'ayidei man noisin koach l'malchus the Kedusha. How do you do this? Ayidei Torah. Shu osi b'koach. Put some effort into your Torah. So he said, K'mo she'amar Chazal, the rabbi said, Im pago b'chach menuvel. If you're walking down the street and you run into somebody who's disgusting, something very, very low, menuvel zeh, that this particular menuvel, and he's talking about me and you. He's talking about us. We're the menuvel because we have all this Yetzer Hara within us. He says, "B'bechinazu mashki." I guess it's mashki kehu. So pull him in to the base of Midrash, to a place where he can learn. He says, "Ki ayedera Torah," because through this Torah, nosin koach l'malchus, because the kedusha, we give strength to the malchus of kedusha. For azay mekabelas malchus shehi bechinas nun, and that's what happens then. When you start learning Torah, and this is the concept that we go through in our learning of the Rav, etc., this is called Mayim Nuchvin. These are prayers from the bottom. Prayers from the bottom. Koich l'malchus the Gedusha. This gives power to the malchus the Gedusha. V'azai mekabelas hamalchus shehiba b'chinas nun. And then what happens about that is that this is the process of pumping the well. That all of this learning that you're doing is causing the strengthening of the nun, and it brings chiyus min ha-chochma, chiyus from the chochma, which is the ches, u'mischaver v'niskasher ha-ches v'hanun, and then you see that they will be tied together, the two letters, the ches of chochma and the nun of malchus, into a unity, into a oneness, which will produce. And this is the basic concept of opposites, of the yichud, the concept of yichud. Look, as this one gets up, that one falls down. But that's what we understand. Who's there? That one? That one is the other side. That's our brother. He's there, didn't run away. He never went away. And it nullifies the malchus of the Rosh. Kamasha Kosev, and that's why they say Rome's going to fall. All that it stands for is going to fall. Ki Yesharim Darch Hashem, because the paths of Hashem are always straight. That was what we're learning in the Yotzetz Chaim, the concept of the light that comes from the nose of Adam Kadmon. Straight. Vel tzadikim yelchu ba. Tzadikim will find that light and they'll walk in it. Uposhim yakashlum bam, and then people who are sinners, they will be stumble in them. Hainuch Darch Hashem, that is through the Darch Hashem. Hainuch Torah, that's the Torah. So therefore, the tzaddikim that are clinging to the malchus of kedusha, heim nischazkim, therefore they fortify themselves. They get stronger and stronger as a result of the learning of their Torah. He said, the poshim yakashlam bam, and then people who disregard them, they'll trip through them, they'll fall. Bechinas malchus of Rishah, which is the malchus of the other side, which is destined to be completely eliminated. Bechinas Yetzer Hara, that would be the Yetzer Hara. Shenayfa v'nichna, what happens to it? Just like he said, v'zakam zenafel, as we raise up our Torah from down below where we're at right now. It brings back a tremendous shefa to us, and when that happens, the other side goes the other way. From their high perch, they fall. Torah canal, and that comes through the Torah. And this is Baruch Fleischman, and this is the end of Shir number 2 in Likutei Maharan.